They ask me if I believe in fate. I tell them yes, because I watched a woman step off a train with nothing but 2 empty hands and a wounded heart. And when she left this world 40 years later, she left behind a legacy that still stands. Her name was Ayanna Redsky. And this is the story of the day a town laughed at her and the day she made them bow their heads. The train screamed into Red Mesa Station like a wounded animal, its iron wheels throwing up clouds of dust so thick you could taste the desert on your tongue. September 1889. 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. The sun hung in the sky like a burning coin. The platform was crowded with the usual folks ranchers in dusty boots, women in faded bonnets, children chasing each other between freight crates. But when that train door opened and she stepped down, every conversation died. Ayanna Redsky was 27 years old and stood nearly 6 feet tall. Her shoulders were broad, her arms strong from work. Her skin was the color of copper, and her eyes were black as volcanic glass. She wore a simple brown cotton dress, thin at the elbows, the hem stained with 3 days of travel. In her left hand she clutched a leather suitcase so old the handle was wrapped in cloth. Inside that suitcase was everything she owned. 3 dresses, a photograph of her parents taken before the soldiers came, a silver pendant her father had carved from a Mexican coin, a bundle of dried sage her grandmother had pressed into her hands before dying. She did not smile. She did not wave. She simply stood on that platform, chin high back straight, while 40 pairs of eyes examined her. A woman near the water tower covered her mouth. "Lord have mercy, look at the size of her." A child no more than 7 pointed. "Mama, is she a giant?" "Hush now," the mother said, but she did not stop staring. And then Simon Carver appeared, pushing through the crowd like he owned every inch of ground. He was 44 years old, wearing a black suit that cost more than most folks earned in 6 months. His hair was slicked back with pomade. He wore leather gloves even in the heat, and his boots were polished to a mirror shine. His eyes were the color of winter ice. When he looked at Ayanna, his expression shifted from curiosity to disgust in a single heartbeat. "Good Lord," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I asked for a wife, not a monument." The laughter came fast and cruel, rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Men slapped their knees. Women hid smiles behind gloved hands. The child who had called her a giant was now openly giggling. Ayanna stood perfectly still. Her fingers tightened on the suitcase handle until her knuckles went white. She bit down on her lower lip, drawing blood, but she did not let the pain show on her face. Carver stepped closer, circling her, inspecting. "I specified in my letter, 5'4", preferably lighter-skinned, docile temperament." He gestured at her. "You're what, 6 feet, built like you could pull a plow better than any mule I own. Should have ordered from the livestock company instead." More laughter. Louder this time. Someone in the back hollered, "Send her back, Simon, get your money back." Ayanna's heart hammered against her ribs. For one terrible moment, she wanted to scream, to tell them she was not a monster, that she had a mother who taught her to cook and sew, that she had a father who sang songs and taught her to track deer, that she was human just like them, with a heart that bled. But when she opened her mouth, no sound came. Carver waved his hand dismissively. "You're not what I ordered, sweetheart. Stay here. Maybe the next train will take you back to wherever you crawled from." He walked away. The crowd began to disperse, satisfied with the entertainment. Within 5 minutes, the platform was nearly empty. Ayanna stood alone. She looked down at her suitcase, the last thing she owned in this world. The train whistle blew once, mournful and long. Then it pulled away, leaving her in a cloud of dust. She sat down on the wooden bench, forcing her chin high, even though her body trembled. She would not cry. She had learned long ago that tears only made people crueler. The sun dropped lower. The shadows grew longer. The wind picked up swirling red dust around her feet. And that is when he appeared. He had been standing there the whole time, leaning against the water tower in the shade, watching. Tall but not imposing, maybe 6'1", thin, in the way of men who work too hard and eat too little. He wore a brown vest patched at the elbows, denim pants worn pale at the knees, and a hat so faded by sun it was impossible to tell what color it had once been. His eyes were gray, the color of stone after rain, and he had not laughed. Not once. He stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel. The few people still lingering turned to look. This man was known in Red Mesa. Cole Brennan, the rancher who lived alone on Ironwood Ranch 10 miles past the edge of town. The man who had not spoken more than 10 words to anyone since his wife and twin sons died 3 years ago. The man who came to town once a month for supplies and left without making eye contact. He stopped in front of Ayanna. She looked up, eyes sharp with suspicion, ready for another insult. Instead, he said 3 words, "Ride with me." That was all. 3 words. But they struck harder than any cruelty. They were neither kind nor unkind, just plain, steady, real. Ayanna frowned. "You don't know me." "Don't need to," Cole replied, his voice low and rough like gravel in a dry riverbed. "You don't belong to that fool, and you sure don't belong on this platform." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed this was another trick, but there was no smirk on his face, no laughter in his eyes. Just a tired, weathered look that said he understood what it felt like to be left behind. "Why?" she finally asked. Cole's gaze did not waver. "Because it's the right thing to do." There was no pity in his tone, no grand gesture, just a simple statement of fact. And somehow that made her believe him more than any promise would have. He bent down, picked up her suitcase as if it weighed nothing, and started walking toward the dirt road. His horse, a brown Mustang with one white ear, snorted impatiently at a post near the general store. Cole mounted. The dust swirled around him. He did not look back to see if she would follow. Ayanna sat frozen on that bench. Around her, the whispers started again. Where does she think she's going? Probably going to scrub his floors. Man like Brennan doesn't do charity. Her cheeks burned, but she stood. As she stepped off the platform, the sun caught the silver pendant around her neck, the one her father had carved before the soldiers took him in 1886. She touched it once briefly, a silent prayer to ancestors she hoped were watching. Then she started walking after the stranger. The road out of Red Mesa was nothing but dust and silence. The sun sank lower, staining the world the color of old blood. Ayanna walked beside Cole's horse for what felt like hours, saying nothing. Her feet ached in her worn boots, blisters forming, but she did not stumble. She had walked farther than this before. After 5 miles, she spoke, her voice rough. "You don't talk much." "Don't need to," Cole said, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Words don't fix much out here." She almost smiled, though her lips were cracked and dry. "And yet you said 3 that might have saved me." He glanced down at her. "I didn't save you. I just offered a road." They rode on in silence after that. When the sun finally disappeared behind the distant mesas, the temperature dropped fast. The desert did, that burned you alive by day and froze you solid by night. Ayanna shivered in her thin dress. Cole noticed. He always noticed things, even when he pretended not to. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen. "Drink. It's 8 miles total. We're halfway." She took it, drank deeply. The water tasted of metal and dust, but it was cool, and she was grateful. She handed it back. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Cole said. "I'm not a saint." Another mile passed. Her stomach growled so loudly that even the horse's ears twitched. Cole heard it, and for the first time she saw the corner of his mouth twitch upward. Not quite a smile, but close. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked. "Yesterday morning," Ayanna admitted. "The conductor sold sandwiches, but they cost $1.25 each. I only had enough for the ticket." Cole reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a strip of beef jerky so dry it looked like tree bark. "It's tougher than boot leather, but it's food." She took it, bit down, chewed slowly. It was tough, salty, nearly inedible, but it was the first kindness she had received in 3 days. She nodded. "I've had worse." Cole's eyes softened just a fraction. That's what my late wife said about my cooking. The words hung in the air between them. Late wife. Two words that told an entire story without needing details. Ayanna glanced at him, saw the way his jaw tightened. I'm sorry. Life happens, Cole replied. You keep walking or you stop. I kept walking. Another 2 miles passed in silence. The moon rose over the mesa, full and white, lighting the vast emptiness around them. Ayanna could see shapes now in the darkness. Distant hills, scrub brush, a lone coyote watching them from a ridge before it vanished. They did not speak again until Ironwood Ranch came into view. It was not much to look at. A single-story house made of weathered wood and stone, its roof patched with mismatched shingles. A chicken coop leaning so far to one side it looked like a strong wind would knock it over. A barn with half its roof missing the wood, scorched black from what must have been a lightning strike. Fences held together with rusted wire and stubborn hope. But smoke rose from the chimney. A lantern glowed in the window. It was not beautiful, but it was shelter. Cole dismounted, tied the reins to a fence post, and opened the small gate that hung crooked on its hinges. This is it, Ironwood Ranch. Ayanna studied the dark outline of the house. You live out here alone. Most folks aren't worth the trouble of company, Cole said, not unkindly. And I am... He did not answer. Instead, he picked up her suitcase, carried it inside, and set it down by the door. He pointed to a small cot against the far wall covered with a wool blanket that had seen better days, but was clean. Ayanna nodded slowly. I never do. For the first time that day, she sat without shaking. The room smelled of cedar and smoke. Through the cracked window, she could still see the faint glow on the horizon where Red Mesa sat the town that had spit her out. The sound of the wind filled the space between them. It was not friendly, but it was not mocking either, just alive. Cole moved to the stove and fed the flames with split wood, his movements automatic from years of doing this alone. Ayanna studied him in the flickering light. His hands were scarred rough, the hands of a man who had built things and lost things and rebuilt them. His face was lined with exhaustion and something deeper, grief, maybe, or resignation. There was no pity in his movements. That, more than anything, made her feel safe. She lay down on the cot, clutching her father's silver pendant eyes, half open. Outside, the wind howled against the wooden walls, carrying the ghosts of laughter from the station. But in that cold little room, the laughter could not reach her. Not tonight. Before drifting into an uneasy sleep, she heard Cole's boots scrape across the floor. The door creaked as he moved toward the barn. He paused, then said quietly, You can leave in the morning, or stay. Up to you. Then he was gone. Ayanna stared at the ceiling until dawn painted the boards pink. For the first time in her life, she did not feel like running. Morning came slowly, the sun creeping across the floorboards like something testing whether it was welcome. Ayanna woke before the rooster crowed, her body trained by years of rising early to avoid trouble. She had not slept deeply. Sleep was a luxury she had not trusted in years, but the room felt safer than any place she had been in months. No one had tried to hurt her. No one had thrown her out. Her eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. She looked around. The stove was still warm from last night's fire. A wooden chair missing one leg leaned against the wall. Her suitcase sat quietly where Cole had left it, untouched. On a shelf above the stove she saw a tin cup, a plate, a few cooking implements. Everything spoke of one man living alone, surviving with the bare minimum. The door creaked. Ayanna stood quickly, straightening her spine, smoothing her wrinkled dress. Cole stepped into the room, brushing dust from his sleeves. He did not look at her at first, just walked over to a small shelf, took down a tin of tobacco, and began packing his pipe. I'll head out to check the horses, he said, striking a match against the stove. Barn's behind the house, Ayanna nodded. You want me to cook something? He gave her a sidelong glance. Don't know what you're used to, but there's no cook here. You want food? It's in the pantry. You cook, you eat. She nodded again, already moving toward the small wooden cupboard. Cole reached the door, then paused, one hand on the frame. He did not turn around. "Long as you need," he said quietly. The words were simple, but they meant everything. Ayanna watched the door close behind him. She let out a slow breath. There it was. The truth. Not cruelty, not hatred, just distance. And that kind of honesty she could handle. She found enough in the pantry to make a simple breakfast. Beans, stale bread, a strip of dried meat. She rekindled the fire and began to cook. After she ate, she stepped outside. The ranch stretched across hard, unforgiving land. The wind had carved ridges into the red rock. Distant dust devils danced along the horizon. The barn leaned like an old man waiting for the end. The chicken coop stood off to the side, half its fencing missing. Everything about this place screamed of one man holding the line against time, and slowly losing. Later that morning, Ayanna was outside trying to repair the chicken wire when she heard the sound of hooves. "Someone's coming," Cole said, emerging from the barn with a rifle slung across his shoulder. Ayanna squinted toward the road. A lone rider approached on horseback, moving at an easy pace. When the rider got closer, she saw him clearly. A man in his early 30s, wearing a faded deputy's uniform and a wide-brimmed hat. His face was sharp, angular, his skin darker than Cole's, but lighter than hers. His eyes were dark and intelligent. A small feather was tucked into his hatband. The rider dismounted, tying his horse to the post. His eyes scanned Ayanna with a look that was neither hostile nor friendly, just measuring. "Brennan," the deputy said, tipping his hat. "Deputy," Cole replied. The deputy gestured toward Ayanna. "This the woman Carver threw away at the station. She's got a name," Cole said evenly. "Ayanna Redsky." The deputy nodded at her. "Ma'am." "James Red Feather." Ayanna said nothing, just watched. James turned back to Cole, his expression serious. "Carver's been asking around town. Says you stole his property." Cole's jaw tightened. "She's not property." "I know that, you know that, but Carver doesn't see it that way." James shifted his weight, his hand resting unconsciously on his gun belt. "He's got Bulldog Keller on payroll now, as of yesterday." The name hung in the air like a curse. Ayanna did not know who Bulldog Keller was, but she saw the way Cole's entire body went rigid, the way his hand tightened on the rifle. "Keller," Cole said slowly. "That's bad." "Real bad," James agreed. "Ex-cavalry 10th Infantry. Fought Apache for 10 years down in Arizona Territory. Got a scar that runs from his ear to his jaw. Story goes an Apache woman gave it to him right before he killed her. He's hated your people ever since, and Carver's paying him good money." Ayanna felt ice crawl up her spine. She had heard stories about men like Keller, men who saw Apache as animals to be hunted. "What does Carver want?" Cole asked. James looked at Ayanna, and she saw something like sympathy in his eyes. "Revenge. See, his father, Jonathan, was a traitor back in '62, got killed during a raid near Fort Sumner. Apache warriors hit the trading post, killed 4 men. Simon was 17 years old when it happened. Watch the whole thing. He's carried that hate for 27 years now." "So this isn't about me being ugly or too tall," Ayanna said quietly. "It's about what I am." James nodded. "He wanted to break you, show the town he could civilize a savage. When you walked away, you took away his chance to do that. You made him look like a fool, and men like Carver don't forgive that." Cole stepped forward. "What do you think he'll do?" "I think he'll come for her," James said. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when he does, it won't be legal. It'll be Keller and hired guns, probably at night. I'll do what I can, but the sheriff's in Carver's pocket. My badge doesn't mean much against his money." Ayanna spoke then, her voice strong despite the fear in her gut. "Then I'll leave. I won't bring trouble to your door, Mr. Brennan." Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in those gray eyes. "No," he said simply. "No, you're not leaving. You've run your whole life, haven't you?" Ayanna's throat tightened. She nodded. "Then don't run now," Cole said. not from a man who thinks you're less than human." James looked between them, then let out a low whistle. "You're both crazy, but I'll help when I can." He mounted his horse, tipped his hat, and rode off. Ayanna stood there staring at the dust cloud James left behind. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else. Anger, maybe, or determination. Cole walked past her. "If you're staying, we've got work to do." Days passed. Cole and Ayanna worked side by side preparing the ranch. They reinforced barn doors. They stacked hay bales. They filled every container with water. Few words passed between them, but a rhythm developed, an understanding. On the fourth day, they needed supplies. Cole decided they would go into town together. Red Mesa was a small place, just one main street, maybe 200 people. When Cole and Ayanna rode in, every head turned. Whispers followed them like shadows. The general store was run by a woman named Eliza Kern. She was in her early 40s, a widow with kind eyes and weathered hands. When Cole and Ayanna entered, she greeted them with a smile that seemed genuine. As they picked through supplies, Eliza leaned close and whispered, "Carver was here yesterday, bought rope and kerosene." The warning was clear. They were gathering flour and nails when the door opened. Simon Carver stepped inside, followed by a man Ayanna had never seen before. Bulldog Keller was 38 years old, built like a bull with shoulders that barely fit through doorways. A scar ran from his ear to his jaw, thick and angry. His eyes were empty, the eyes of a man who had killed and would kill again without thought. The room seemed to shrink. Carver's mouth curled into a cold smile. "Well, look what the coyotes dragged back." He stepped closer, his voice carrying to every corner of the store. "I see you've found a new keeper, Ayanna. Does he know what he's getting? Does he know what you are?" Cole moved between them. "She's under my roof. You got a problem with that. Take it up with me." Bulldog's hand moved to rest on his pistol. His voice was deep, almost a growl. "Boss wants his property back." Ayanna stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "I was never his property. I'm no one's property." Carver's hand moved toward his gun. Cole mirrored the movement. The air snapped tight. 4 people, all armed, all watching each other. Then Deputy James appeared in the doorway. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "not in my town." Carver's cold smile widened. "Your town I own, this town Red Feather. The bank, the land, half the businesses. You'd do well to remember that." But he stepped back. "This isn't over, Brennan. You're protecting something that doesn't belong here, something that never will." He and Bulldog left. James scratched his jaw. "He's getting bold. I've seen him hiring men not from around here, ranch hands with gun belts." "Planning something?" Cole asked. "Feels like it," James said. "I can't arrest a man for talking, but I'll keep watch." Ayanna crossed her arms. "You think he'll stop just because the law is watching?" James looked at her, his eyes tired. "Ma'am, I think Simon Carver only respects one thing: what bleeds." Back at the ranch, Cole brought out his rifle. "If you're staying, you need to know how to defend yourself." He set up tin cans 30 yards away and handed her the Winchester. "Shoulder here, sight down the barrel. Breathe out slowly, then squeeze." The first shot kicked hard, throwing her back a step. The bullet went wide, missing by 10 feet. Cole's voice was steady. "Don't fight the recoil. Let it come, then breathe through it. The gun's not your enemy." She tried again, closer this time, and again, each shot better than the last. On her 5th attempt, the sharp ping of metal on metal rang out as the bullet struck the can dead center. Cole nodded. "Natural. Your father teach you to shoot?" "Bow," Ayanna said. "Took down a deer at 60 yards when I was 14. "Then you know patience," Cole said. "Guns faster, but the principle's the same." They practiced until the sun began to set. By the end, she was hitting 7 out of 10. The next day, Cole cut his hand on a length of fence wire, deep enough to bleed freely. Ayanna saw it and went to her suitcase, pulling out a small bundle of herbs. "Let me see," she said. Cole was suspicious. What's that? Medicine, yarrow. It stops bleeding and fights infection. I'll use whiskey. Whiskey burns, Ayanna said. This heals. She crushed the leaves between her fingers and pressed them to the wound, then wrapped it with a strip of cloth from her dress hem. Where'd you learn this? Cole asked. My grandmother, Ayanna said quietly. She was a healer before they took her to the reservation, before she died of pneumonia because the white doctor wouldn't come. Cole was silent, understanding passing between them. The next morning the wound was healing cleanly, no infection, no inflammation. Cole looked at his hand, then at her. Thank you. It was the first time he had thanked her for anything. That afternoon Eliza Kern arrived at the ranch in a wagon. She brought flour, sugar, ammunition, and bandages. This is from me, she said. Don't tell anyone. Cole frowned. Why are you helping? Eliza looked at him steadily. 10 years ago, I was the one people laughed at. My husband drank himself to death and left me with nothing. The town would have let me starve if not for one person who helped me. Who? Ayanna asked. You're Cole, Eliza said. He gave me credit at his old store before Carver shut it down, kept me alive through that first winter. She looked at Ayanna. You're not alone. Some of us remember kindness. After she left, Ayanna looked at Cole differently. That evening they sat on the porch as the sun set. The sky turned orange and purple. Cole smoked his pipe. Ayanna wrapped herself in a blanket. For a long time neither spoke. Finally, Cole broke the silence. My wife's name was Mary. My boys were Daniel and Ethan, twins, 5 years old. Ayanna waited, sensing there was more. 3 years ago they got sick. Diphtheria. Started with Daniel, then Ethan, then Mary. His voice was carefully controlled. Town doctor wouldn't come out here because I didn't have $50 to pay him up front. I had 20. I offered him everything I owned. He said no. He paused, his jaw working. They died within 2 days of each other. I buried them myself on the hill behind this house under the cottonwood tree where Mary used to sit and watch the sunset. The town didn't care. No one came. There was no funeral. I was alone with 3 graves. He looked at Ayanna, his eyes raw with old pain. So when I see someone being thrown away, I don't walk past. Not anymore. Ayanna felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back. I lost my father to soldiers 3 years ago, too. They said he was hostile. He was hunting deer. My mother died a year later. The doctor said pneumonia, but I know it was grief. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped wanting to live. Cole nodded slowly. Then we both know what it's like to be forgotten. Maybe that's why we're still here, Ayanna said softly. Too stubborn to quit. Cole's mouth twitched almost a smile. Or too stupid to know when we're beaten. They both laughed, then brief and quiet, but real. The first genuine laughter either had shared in years. The next morning, a rider approached the ranch, but this one moved slowly, ceremonially, radiating calm rather than threat. Sam Whitehorse was 64 years old, an Apache medicine man with long gray braids and eyes as sharp as a hawk's. He rode an Appaloosa horse and carried himself with quiet dignity. Cole stood respectful. Sam? Sam dismounted and studied Ayanna for a long moment. They laughed at you at the station, he said. It was not a question. Ayanna nodded. Sam reached into his satchel and pulled out a bundle wrapped in cloth. Yarrow and sweetgrass, for wounds that don't show. He handed it to Ayanna, and she accepted it with both hands. Before mounting his horse again, Sam said to her, You're one of us now. Then to Cole, Simon Carver has been asking questions about her. He's not done. I know, Cole said. But you're not alone, Sam said. Our people are watching. When trouble comes, you'll have help. Ayanna's eyes widened. She had not expected this, had not expected anyone from her own people to care. Sam sat back down and told them the history they needed to know. Carver's father, Jonathan, was a traitor. In 1862, there was a raid at Fort Sumner. 4 white men were killed. Jonathan was one of them. Simon was 17 years old. His father had hidden him, and he watched the whole thing. 27 years, Em continued. 27 years of carrying that hate. He sees you as a chance to tame one of us, to prove he's better than his father who got killed. When you walked away, you took that from him." Cole's voice was hard. "Then we show him he's wrong." Sam nodded. He performed a short ceremony, then burning sage-speaking words in Apache that Ayanna had not heard since childhood. He blessed the land, the house, the people who stood on it. When he finished, he turned to Ayanna one last time. "You carry the strength of your grandmothers. They walked through fire and did not burn. So will you. Don't forget that." Tears filled Ayanna's eyes, but she did not let them fall. After Sam rode away, Ayanna and Cole stood in the yard. The wind picked up swirling dust around their feet. "If Carver comes," Ayanna began. "When," Cole corrected. "When he comes. When he comes, it will be violent. Yes. People might die. Yes." Ayanna turned to face him. "I won't run. I've run my whole life. From every reservation, every town, every man who looked at me wrong. I won't run any more." "Good," Cole said, "because I'm not letting you face it alone." It was not romance. It was partnership. Two people standing as equals against what was coming. They looked at the ranch small and weathered, but theirs. Ayanna touched the silver pendant around her neck and whispered a prayer to her ancestors. "Give me courage." And deep inside, where fear and hope lived side by side, she made a promise. To herself, to the land, to the ghosts of everyone who had come before. "I will not bow, not to him, not to anyone. Whatever comes, I face it standing." The sun set red across the mesa. Stars began to emerge one by one, filling the vast darkness with light. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. But Cole and Ayanna stood together on that porch, ready for whatever the night would bring. Ready to fight, ready to survive, ready to prove that some people, no matter how hard the world tries to break them, simply refuse to bow. 3 days passed in tense quiet. Cole and Ayanna worked from dawn until the stars came out, fortifying what could be fortified, preparing for violence they both knew was coming. They dug shallow trenches along the fence line. They stacked sandbags made from flour sacks filled with dirt. They moved ammunition into the house and barn within easy reach. They practiced shooting until Ayanna's shoulder ached and her ears rang. On the 4th morning, Cole rode into town alone. He needed nails and wire things that could not wait. Ayanna wanted to go with him, but he shook his head. "If they're watching and they are better, they see me alone. Makes them think you're here undefended. Might buy us time." She did not like it, but she understood the logic. While he was gone, she worked on the chicken coop, replacing the last of the broken wire. The morning was hot, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer. Sweat ran down her back, soaking through her dress. She was concentrating so hard on twisting wire into place that she did not hear the horses until they were almost at the gate. 3 men. The first was Bulldog Keller, massive and scarred, sitting on a horse that looked too small beneath him. The second was a thin man with a crooked nose and quick eyes. The third was younger, maybe 20, with a gun belt that looked too new. Ayanna straightened slowly, the pliers still in her hand. Her rifle was leaning against the fence post 15 feet away. Too far. Bulldog did not dismount. He just sat there on his horse, staring at her with those empty eyes. "Where's Brennan?" he asked. "Town," Ayanna said. Her voice was steady, though her heart hammered. "That's convenient." Bulldog leaned forward in his saddle. "Mr. Carver wants to talk to you, wants to make things right." "There's nothing to make right," Ayanna said. "I don't belong to him. Never did." The thin man spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "That's not how he sees it. Paid good money for you, got paperwork and everything." "Paperwork doesn't make me property." Bulldog smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Law says different. Law says a man enters into a contract for a bride, she's obligated to fulfill that contract. Otherwise it's theft of services. That's not law," Ayanna said. "That's what Carver told you to say." The young man laughed nervously. Bulldog shot him a look that killed the sound instantly. "You gonna come peaceful?" Bulldog asked. "Or do we need to get rough?" Ayanna's mind raced. 3 of them, armed. She was alone, her rifle too far away. But she had a knife in her boot hidden, and she had fought before. Had to on the reservation when men thought Apache women were easy prey. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Bulldog sighed like this was all very tedious. "Thought you'd say that." He dismounted his boots, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The other 2 followed. They spread out slightly, flanking her. Ayanna took a step back, her hand dropping casually to her boot. She wrapped her fingers around the knife handle. "You pull that knife," Bulldog said, "and this goes from talking to bleeding real fast. That what you want?" Before she could answer, a voice called out from the direction of the house. "She said she's not going." All 4 of them turned. Deputy James Red Feather stood on the porch, his rifle aimed squarely at Bulldog's chest. He must have ridden up the back way through the creek bed, his horse hidden behind the house. "This is none of your concern, Red Feather," Bulldog said. "It is when it happens in my jurisdiction," James replied. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "And when 3 armed men show up to threaten an unarmed woman." "We're not threatening," the thin man said. "Just talking." "Talking's done," James said. "Mount up and ride out, now." For a long moment, nobody moved. The air was so tense it felt like lightning before a storm. Ayanna could see Bulldog's hand twitch toward his gun. Then James pulled back the hammer on his rifle, the sound sharp and final in the morning air. "I can drop all 3 of you before you clear leather," James said quietly. "And we both know it." Bulldog stared at him for another 5 seconds. Then he turned and spat into the dirt. "You're making a mistake, Red Feather. Carver owns the sheriff, owns the mayor. Hell, he probably owns you too, you just don't know it yet." "Maybe," James said. "But today, right now, I own this moment. And I say you leave." Bulldog climbed back onto his horse. The other 2 followed. As they turned to go, Bulldog looked back at Ayanna. "This ain't over, girl. Not by half." They rode off, taking their time, making it clear they were leaving by choice, not because they were afraid. When they were out of sight, James lowered his rifle and walked down from the porch. Ayanna realized she was still holding the knife, her knuckles white around the handle. She forced herself to let go to breathe. "Thank you," she said. James shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. I bought you time, that's all. Maybe a day, maybe 2, but Bulldog's right about one thing. Carver owns most of this county, and what he wants, he usually gets. Not this time," Ayanna said. James looked at her for a long moment. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Can't it be both?" That surprised a laugh out of him. "Yeah, I suppose it can." Cole rode back an hour later. When James told him what had happened, his face went hard as stone. "They came here," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "to my land. And they'll come back," James said, "with more men next time. Carver's not playing anymore. This is the end game." Cole looked at Ayanna. "You sure about this?" "About staying, because once this starts, there's no going back." Ayanna met his gaze without flinching. "I'm sure." He nodded once. Then he turned to James. "How much time do we have?" "Tonight, maybe. Tomorrow at the latest. Carver's gathering men. I've counted at least 8 so far, not including Bulldog. They're setting up in the old McCready barn outside town." 8 against 2, Cole said. 3, James corrected. "I'm in this too. You'll lose your badge." "Had it 3 years, James said with a shrug. "Never much liked it anyway." That night they prepared for war. Cole and Ayanna moved everything valuable into the cellar beneath the house. Food, water, ammunition, medical supplies. If the house burned, they would still have something. They piled sandbags in front of the windows. They filled barrels with water and placed them strategically both for drinking and for fighting fires. They loaded every gun they owned and placed them at intervals around the property. As the sun set, Sam Whitehorse returned, but he was not alone. With him came 3 other Apache men. They rode in quietly without fanfare and dismounted in the yard. Sam introduced them. "This is Red Sky Walker, Tom Longfeather, and Joseph Benally. They've come to stand with you." Cole looked at the three men, then at Sam. "You don't have to do this. This isn't your fight." Red Skywalker, the oldest of the three, smiled without humor. "Any fight against Simon Carver is our fight. His father killed Apaches. He would too if the law allowed it. We stand." "We could die here," Cole said, making sure they understood. "Then we die standing," Red Skywalker replied, "instead of kneeling on a reservation waiting for the government to decide if we eat this month." Cole nodded slowly. "Then I'm honored to fight beside you." They spent the evening preparing positions. Red Skywalker and Tom Longfeather took the barn with clear sight lines to the main road. Joseph Benally positioned himself in the chicken coop, which, despite its ramshackle appearance, offered good cover and a view of the eastern approach. James took the porch with sandbags piled high. Cole and Ayanna would hold the house itself. As darkness fell, Sam performed another ceremony. He burned sage and spoke in Apache, calling on ancestors and spirits to protect those who would fight here. Ayanna closed her eyes and added her own prayer, feeling the weight of the silver pendant against her chest. When Sam finished, he looked at each of them in turn. "Tonight you stand for more than yourselves. You stand for everyone who has been told they are less than human, everyone who has been thrown away. Make your stand count." Then he rode away into the darkness, leaving them to wait. The moon rose full and bright, turning the desert silver. Cole and Ayanna sat in the house watching through the window gaps. An hour passed, then two. "Maybe they won't come tonight," Ayanna whispered. Cole shook his head. "They'll come. Carver's not a patient man." He was right. At midnight they heard it, the sound of horses, many horses moving slowly through the darkness. Not trying to be quiet anymore, they wanted to be heard, wanted the fear. Cole moved to the window. In the moonlight, he could see them coming up the main road. A dozen men on horseback, maybe more. In the lead was Simon Carver himself, dressed in black, looking like death on a horse. Next to him was Bulldog Keller, massive and inevitable. They stopped 100 yards from the house. Carver's voice carried across the distance. "Brennan, I know you're in there. Send the woman out, and we leave peacefully. Nobody has to die tonight." Cole did not answer, did not move. "I'm a reasonable man," Carver continued. "I paid good money for her. All I want is what's mine. You give her to me, I'll even pay you for your trouble. Say $100, that's fair." Still Cole said nothing. Carver's voice hardened. "Or we can do this the hard way. We burn you out. Everyone dies. Your choice, Brennan. You got 1 minute to decide." Cole looked at Ayanna. "Last chance. You can still walk away from this." She picked up her rifle and checked the chamber. "I'm not walking anywhere." Cole smiled just a little. Then he called out the window, his voice loud and clear in the night air. "Simon Carver, you're on my land. You're threatening my household. In the territory of New Mexico, that gives me the right to defend my property with lethal force. I'm giving you 10 seconds to turn around and leave. After that, we start shooting." Silence. Then Carver laughed. "You're outnumbered, Brennan. Outgunned. You can't win." "Maybe," Cole replied. "But I can make you bleed. And I promise you, Simon, you'll be the first one I put down. That worth it to you. Dying for pride." Another pause. Then Carver's voice, cold and final. "Burn them out." 2 riders broke from the group carrying torches. They spurred their horses forward, heading for the barn. Red Skywalker and Tom Longfeather opened fire. The first rider fell from his saddle, his torch spinning away into the darkness. The second veered off his horse, panicking. More gunfire erupted from the chicken coop as Joseph Benally joined in. The attacking riders scattered, returning fire wildly. And then it was chaos. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like lightning. The sound of gunfire was deafening, rolling across the desert like thunder. Bullets whined through the air, thudding into wood, kicking up dirt, shattering glass. Cole fired methodically, choosing his targets with care. Ayanna did the same, remembering everything he had taught her. Breathe, aim, squeeze. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, but she held steady. A man ran toward the house carrying a torch. James shot him from the porch. The man fell the torch, rolling away harmlessly. Another rider charged the barn, firing a pistol. Red Skywalker's rifle cracked, and the rider slumped forward in his saddle. His horse, terrified, bolted back toward town with the wounded man barely hanging on. Bulldog Keller dismounted and began working his way toward the house, using the fence line for cover. He was good professional, moving in short bursts, never exposing himself for more than a second. Cole saw him and cursed. "He's trying to flank us." Ayanna moved to the side window, watching for movement. There, a shadow moving. She aimed carefully and fired. The bullet hit the fence post inches from Bulldog's head, showering him with splinters. He returned fire bullets, punching through the thin wood of the house. Ayanna dropped flat, her heart racing. "You okay?" Cole called. "Fine." The fight went on. 5 minutes. 10. Time lost all meaning in the smoke and noise and terror. Ayanna reloaded her rifle with shaking hands. They were running low on ammunition. Through the window, she could see Carver's men regrouping, preparing for another assault. There were still too many of them. Cole appeared beside her, blood streaking his face from a graze wound. "We can't hold them much longer." She knew he was right. They had fought well, but numbers would win eventually. "This is it then," Ayanna said quietly, checking her rifle one more time. "Last stand." Cole reached for her hand, squeezed once. "At least we stood." Then suddenly a new sound. A bugle call, clear and sharp. Everyone stopped shooting, confused. Out of the darkness came riders, but not from Carver's direction. From the south, from the direction of the Apache camp. 10 men on horseback, then 20, then 30. They spread out in a line, forming a barrier between Carver's men and the ranch. Sam Whitehorse rode at their head, his face painted for war. He called out, his voice carrying, "Simon Carver, you have attacked an innocent woman and those who defend her. You have brought violence to this land. We say no more. Leave now or face all of us." Carver's voice was panicked, now angry. "You have no authority here. This is white man's law." "This is Apache land," Sam replied calmly. "Has been for 1,000 years, will be for 1,000 more. You are the trespasser here. Now go." For a long moment nothing happened. The two forces faced each other across the moonlit desert. Carver's men were looking at each other nervously, doing the math. They were outnumbered now, badly. Bulldog Keller climbed back onto his horse and rode to Carver's side. He said something quietly. Carver shook his head violently, but Bulldog kept talking. Finally, Carver yanked his horse's reins and turned away. "This isn't over," he shouted back. Not by a long shot, but he was leaving. They all were disappearing back down the road toward town, leaving only dust and empty shell casings behind. Cole and Ayanna would learn later that Bulldog Keller had not made it far. A bullet from Red Skywalker's rifle had punctured his lung. He collapsed a mile down the road and bled out in the dust while his employer fled. The rancher who found his body the next morning recognized him and brought word to town. No one claimed the corpse. He was buried in an unmarked grave at county expense, his name already fading from memory. The Apache warriors held their position until Carver's men were completely out of sight. Then Sam rode forward to the house. Cole and Ayanna came out onto the porch. Ayanna's hands were shaking, but she was smiling. "Thank you," Cole said. "You saved our lives." Sam shook his head. "We stood for what was right. That's all." He looked at Ayanna. "You fought well. Your ancestors would be proud." Tears streamed down Ayanna's face, but she made no move to wipe them away. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me as one of you." "You have always been one of us," Sam said simply. "Now rest. Tomorrow we talk about what comes next." Morning came with surprising gentleness. The sun rose soft and golden as if the violence of the night before had never happened. But the evidence was everywhere. Bullet holes in the walls, broken glass, churned earth where horses had panicked, 3 blood stains in the dirt where wounded men had fallen. Ayanna stood in the yard looking at the damage. They had survived. Against all odds, They had survived. Cole emerged from the barn, exhaustion written in every line of his face. Neither of them had slept. Red, Skywalker, and Tom are fine. A few splinters, nothing serious. Joseph took a bullet in the arm, but it went clean through. Sam's tending to him. And us? Ayanna asked. Cole looked down at his left hand where a bullet had grazed his knuckles. We've been through worse. James appeared from behind the house, his deputy badge no longer pinned to his chest. He had taken it off at some point during the night, a quiet resignation. I've been thinking, he said. Carver's not going to stop. Not now. His pride's wounded, and worse, the whole territory's going to hear about what happened last night. How a dozen white men got turned back by an Apache war party and a couple of settlers. So what do? Cole asked. We take the fight to him, James said. Not with guns, with law. Real law, not the pocket sheriff he's bought. We go to Santa Fe, bring in the federal marshal, show him evidence of what Carver's been doing. What evidence? Ayanna asked. James smiled. I've been collecting it for 2 years. Names of people he's cheated. Deeds he's stolen. Bribes he's paid. I've got a ledger hidden where even he can't find it. But I needed someone brave enough to stand against him first, to prove it could be done. He looked at Ayanna. You did that. You stood. We stood, she corrected. All of us. That afternoon, a wagon arrived from town. Eliza Kern was driving, and in the back were 5 more people. A rancher named Thomas Hayes, a Mexican woman named Maria Gonzalez, a freed slave named Moses Wright, a Chinese railroad worker named Lin Chen, and old Mrs. Patterson, who ran the boarding house. Eliza climbed down. We heard what happened. Figured you could use some help rebuilding. Cole was stunned. Why would you risk Carver's anger? Moses Wright stepped forward. He was in his 50s, with gray in his beard and hands scarred from decades of hard labor. Because we're tired of being afraid, tired of watching Carver take what he wants and hurt who he wants. You showed us it's possible to fight back. Now we want to help. Thomas Hayes nodded. Besides, Carver's been after my land for 3 years. If he goes down, my family keeps our home. They worked together all day, replacing glass, patching bullet holes, reinforcing the barn. As they worked, more people arrived. By sunset, there were 20 people at the ranch, all volunteering their labor, all risking Carver's retribution. Ayanna moved among them, offering water, helping where she could, overwhelmed by this sudden community. These were people she had never met who owed her nothing, yet they had come. As the sun set, Maria Gonzalez pulled Ayanna aside. She was 40 years old, with kind eyes and work-roughened hands. 5 years ago, Maria said quietly, I came to Red Mesa from Mexico. I had nothing. No English, no money, no husband. Carver offered me work at his house. I thought it was salvation. She paused, her hands twisting together. He treated me like property, like I was less than human. When I tried to leave, he told the sheriff I had stolen from him. I spent 6 months in jail for a crime I did not commit. Maria looked directly at Ayanna. When I heard you stood up to him, refused to bow, I felt something I had not felt in years, hope. So I came to say thank you, and to help however I can. Ayanna embraced her, and Maria held on tight, 2 women who understood what it meant to be seen as less than human. That night, after everyone had gone home, Cole and Ayanna sat on the porch again. The ranch looked better already, still scarred, but healing. I need to tell you something, Cole said. When Mary and the boys died, I stopped living. I mean, I was still breathing, still working, but I wasn't alive. I was just waiting for the world to finish me off. He turned to look at her. You changed that. Not because I have feelings for you, though I do, but because you reminded me what it means to stand for something, to fight for something. You gave me purpose again. Ayanna felt her breath catch. What kind of feelings? Cole smiled, that rare expression that transformed his whole face. The kind that make a man want to wake up in the morning. The kind that make him hope for a future he'd stopped believing in. I feel that too, Ayanna said softly. but I don't know if I can be what you need. I'm still broken in places." "We're all broken," Cole said. "Question is whether we can be broken together." Before she could respond, the sound of a horse approaching fast made them both stand. Their hands went to their guns, but it was Deputy James riding hard, his face urgent in the moonlight. "They arrested Sam," he said, sliding from his horse. "Carver claimed he led an armed insurrection against lawful officers. The pocket sheriff locked him up 2 hours ago." "That's insane," Ayanna said. "Sam was defending us." "Doesn't matter," James said. "Carver's playing a different game now. He's going to make an example of Sam. Public trial, quick conviction, hanging within a week. Unless we stop him." Cole's face was hard. "How?" "The federal marshal," James said. "He's supposed to arrive in Santa Fe next week. But if we can get him here sooner, show him what's really happening, he has authority over the local sheriff." "That's 4 days' ride to Santa Fe," Cole said, "and 4 days back. Sam doesn't have 8 days." "I know," James said. "That's why I need to leave tonight. Ride hard, change horses in Socorro. I can make it in 2 days if I push." "And the evidence?" Ayanna asked. James pulled a oilskin-wrapped package from his saddlebag. "It's all here. 2 years of records. Enough to put Carver away for a decade, maybe more. But I need you two to keep Sam alive while I'm gone. If they try to move the trial up, delay it. Cause a scene. Do whatever you have to." "We will," Ayanna promised. James mounted his horse again. "One more thing. Carver's hired more men. 6 arrived this afternoon from El Paso. Professional guns. Whatever happens, don't face him alone. Stay with groups. Stay visible." Then he was gone, riding south toward Santa Fe, carrying their hope with him. The next morning, Cole and Ayanna rode into town. The main street was unusually crowded. People lined both sides, talking in hushed voices. At the end of the street, a gallows was being built. The sound of hammers on wood echoed off the buildings like a death drum. Ayanna felt sick. They tied their horses outside the sheriff's office and went inside. Sheriff Cowan was behind his desk, a fat man with mean eyes. He looked up as they entered, his expression hostile. "What do you want, Brennan?" "To see Sam Whitehorse," Cole said. "No visitors." "On whose authority?" "Mine," came a voice from the back room. Simon Carver stepped through the doorway, looking perfectly composed, as if the battle 3 nights ago had never happened. "Sam Whitehorse is charged with armed insurrection and attempted murder. He'll be tried tomorrow morning and hanged before sunset." "Tomorrow," Ayanna said. "That's not legal. He has a right to defend himself." Carver smiled. "He'll have a trial. Quick one, true, but legal nonetheless. Judge Morrison is riding in tonight. Everything will be proper and official." "Judge Morrison works for you," Cole said. "Judge Morrison works for the territory of New Mexico," Carver corrected. "But yes, we are acquainted. The point is, this matter will be settled swiftly, as a lesson to others who might think armed resistance is acceptable." He looked directly at Ayanna. "You should have come with me when you had the chance. None of this would have happened. Sam Whitehorse would be free. But you insisted on defiance. Now a good man will hang because of your pride." Ayanna stepped forward, her hands balled into fists. "Sam will hang because you're a coward who can't accept that a woman said no to you." Carver's smile vanished. "Watch your tongue, girl." "Or what?" Ayanna shot back. "You'll arrest me too. Go ahead. Arrest half the town while you're at it. Because they're watching now. They see what you are." Sheriff Cowan stood his hand on his gun. "That's enough. Get out." Cole put a hand on Ayanna's shoulder. "Come on." Outside, the street had grown even more crowded. Word had spread. Ayanna saw Maria Gonzalez standing with Moses Wright, Thomas Hayes with his wife and 3 children, Eliza Kern, Lynn Chen. Dozens of others, all watching the sheriff's office with hostile eyes. Red Sky Walker emerged from the crowd. "They won't let us see him. Won't tell us anything." "Trial's tomorrow morning," Cole said quietly. "Fast trial. Carver's bought judge." "Then we take him," Red Sky Walker said. His eyes were hard. "Storm the jail tonight. Free Sam. Ride for the Apache camp." "That's what Carver wants," Ayanna said. An excuse to call in the territorial militia, to justify a massacre. "So what do we do?" Red Skywalker demanded. "Let him hang." "We delay," Cole said. "Cause problems, make noise, drag out the trial as long as possible. James will be back in 3 days with the federal marshal. We just need to buy time." That night people gathered at the ranch. More than 50 came, Apache and white and Mexican and Chinese, all mixing together, united by common purpose. They made plans, strategies. Who would do what, when? Ayanna found herself in the center of it, these people looking to her for leadership she did not feel qualified to give. But when she spoke, they listened. "Tomorrow we fill that courtroom," she said. "Every seat, standing room. We make them see us, make them know we're watching. And if they try to railroad this trial, we object, loudly, all of us." Moses Wright stood. "I've seen rush trials before. Back in Mississippi, they don't end well." "This one will be different," Ayanna said with more confidence than she felt, "because this time we're not alone." The next morning, the makeshift courthouse was standing room only. The trial was set to begin at 9 o'clock. By 8:30, every seat was full. People lined the walls, crowded the doorway, spilled out into the street. Judge Morrison was a thin man with a sharp face and sharper eyes. He took one look at the packed room and frowned. "This is highly irregular." "This is a public trial," Cole said from the front row. "The public has a right to attend." Judge Morrison glared at him but said nothing. Sam was brought in wearing chains, his face calm, almost serene. When he saw the crowd, the tiniest smile touched his lips. The trial was a farce from the start. The prosecutor, a man named Dalton who worked for Carver, presented his case. Sam had led an armed group against lawful officers of the peace. He had threatened violence. He had interfered with a legal matter. No mention of Carver's attack on the ranch. No mention of the dozen armed men who had tried to burn them out. The story had been twisted, reshaped, made into something it was not. When it was time for Sam to defend himself, he stood slowly. "I am Apache," he said simply. "My people have lived on this land for more generations than you can count. We have been pushed, herded, slaughtered, lied to, but we are still here." Judge Morrison banged his gavel. "This is not relevant to the charges." "It is the only thing relevant," Sam continued. "Simon Carver attacked an innocent woman because she refused him. He brought a dozen armed men to burn her home. We stopped him. That is not insurrection. That is justice." "Justice is what this court decides," Judge Morrison snapped. "Then your justice is broken," Sam said. The courtroom erupted, people shouting, some in support, others in outrage. Judge Morrison banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Through the chaos, Ayanna saw Carver sitting in the back watching everything with cold calculation. This was not going as smoothly as he had hoped. Good. The trial dragged on. Witness after witness called to testify. Each questioned their stories, picked apart. The sun climbed high, then began to descend. At 4 o'clock, Judge Morrison called for a recess until the next morning. "We will reconvene at 9 o'clock. At that time I will deliver my verdict." Another day gained. That night riders came from the south, 3 men on exhausted horses riding straight to the ranch. James Redfeather was in the lead, his face haggard but determined. Behind him were 2 men in federal uniforms. U.S. Marshal Henry Stokes was in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. His deputy, a younger man named Thomas Gaines, looked around the crowded ranch with open curiosity. "Mr. Brennan," Marshal Stokes said, dismounting stiffly, "Deputy Redfeather has told me quite a story. I'd like to hear it from you." They spent 3 hours going through everything. Cole's account, Ayanna's, the testimony of the others who had been there, and finally James's ledger with 2 years of careful documentation of Carver's crimes. When they were finished, Marshal Stokes sat back. "This is enough to arrest Simon Carver on multiple charges: fraud, bribery, corruption of public officials, and attempted murder." "What about Sam?" Ayanna asked. If everything happened as you say, the charges against him are groundless. I'll have him released immediately." Relief flooded through Ayanna so powerfully she felt dizzy. The next morning, the courtroom was even more packed than before. Word had spread that something was happening. The air crackled with anticipation. Judge Morrison took his seat. "We will now hear my verdict in the matter of the Territory versus Samuel Whitehorse." "That won't be necessary, Your Honor." Every head turned. Marshal Stokes stood at the back of the courtroom, his badge glinting in the morning light. U.S. Marshal Henry Stokes. "I'm here on federal authority to investigate allegations of corruption and abuse of power in this county." Judge Morrison's face went pale. "This is a territorial matter." "It became a federal matter when civil rights were violated," Stokes said calmly. He walked down the aisle, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. "Samuel Whitehorse, you are hereby released. All charges dropped." The courtroom exploded in cheers. Marshal Stokes raised his voice to be heard over the noise. "Furthermore, I have warrants for the arrest of Simon Carver on charges of fraud, bribery, attempted murder, and corruption of public officials, and for Sheriff Cowan on charges of accepting bribes and obstruction of justice." Simon Carver stood, his face twisted with rage. "You have no authority here." "I have every authority," Stokes replied. "Deputy Gaines, take them into custody." Carver tried to run. He actually turned and bolted for the door. But the crowd blocked his way, a wall of bodies that refused to let him pass. He was trapped, surrounded by all the people he had hurt and threatened and terrorized. Marshal Stokes walked up to him calmly and placed him in handcuffs. "Simon Carver, you are under arrest." As federal deputies escorted Carver from the courtroom, he turned one final time. But the hatred had drained from his eyes, replaced by something closer to disbelief. He had truly believed he was untouchable. Ayanna watched him go without speaking. There was nothing left to say. "You could have walked away. You could have let me go, but your pride wouldn't allow it. Now you'll spend years in prison thinking about the woman who said no." Carver was dragged outside, still protesting, still threatening. The courtroom erupted again, this time in celebration. People hugged each other, cried, laughed. Sam Whitehorse was freed from his chains, immediately surrounded by his people. He made his way through the crowd to Ayanna. "You stood when it mattered. You gave others courage. Thank you." Ayanna shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for seeing me as worthy of defending." "You were always worthy," Sam said simply. Outside, the celebration continued. Someone produced a fiddle. Music filled the street. Children danced. Adults who had been enemies yesterday stood together today, united by what they had survived. Cole found Ayanna sitting on the church steps, watching it all with wonder. "You did this," he said. "We did this," she corrected. "No," Cole said. "You started it, by refusing to bow, by standing up. The rest of us just followed your lead." He sat down beside her. "What happens now?" Ayanna looked at him. "I don't know. For the first time in my life, I don't know what comes next. And that's terrifying and wonderful at the same time." "Want to figure it out together?" Cole asked. She smiled. "Yes, I think I do." As the sun set over Red Mesa, painting the desert gold and crimson, Ayanna. Redsky sat beside Cole Brennan and watched a community celebrate. A community that had learned what she had known all her life, that sometimes the only way to survive is to stand together. That power comes not from breaking people, but from lifting them up. And that some people, no matter how hard the world tries to destroy them, simply refuse to be destroyed. They stand, they fight, they survive. And sometimes, against all odds, they win. 6 months had passed since Simon Carver's arrest. Spring had come to New Mexico Territory, painting the desert in colors Ayanna had almost forgotten existed. Wildflowers bloomed between the rocks, defiant splashes of yellow and purple. The creek behind the ranch ran full for the first time in years, fed by winter snows melting in the distant mountains. Ironwood Ranch looked different now. The barn had a new roof, straight and strong. The chicken coop stood upright, reinforced with proper lumber. The house had fresh paint on the shutters, and the windows no longer rattled in the wind. But the biggest change was not to the buildings, it was to the land itself. Where once there had been only dust and scrub brush, now there were rows of young corn-green shoots reaching toward the sun. Beans climbed poles in neat lines. Squash plants spread their broad leaves across carefully tended soil. It was not much, not yet, but it was a garden, a promise that things could grow here even in hard ground. Ayanna knelt between the rows, pulling weeds with practiced fingers. Her hands were calloused now, toughened by months of work. Her arms had grown stronger. Her face had lost that hunted, desperate look. She was still tall, still broad-shouldered, still unmistakably Apache. But she no longer looked like a woman running from something. She looked like a woman building something. "You're going to wear yourself out," Cole said, walking up from the barn. He carried a bucket of water in each hand, drawn fresh from the well. "It's not even noon, and you've been out here since dawn." "The weeds don't stop growing just because I'm tired," Ayanna replied, but she stood brushing dirt from her knees. She took one of the buckets and began watering the corn, moving methodically down the row. Cole watched her work for a moment, that quiet smile on his face that she had come to recognize. Not the rare transforming grin he showed when something truly surprised him, but the everyday contentment of a man who had found peace. "Letter came this morning," he said. "From Santa Fe, Marshal Stokes." Ayanna paused, her heart quickening. "And Carver's trial is set for June, federal court. Stokes says the evidence is solid. Between James's ledger and the testimony from everyone he hurt, the prosecutor thinks 20 years minimum." Ayanna let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. 20 years? "More than that, probably," Cole added. "They found more once they started digging. Turns out he'd been running a scheme selling land he didn't own to settlers back east. Fraud on top of everything else." "Good," Ayanna said simply. She went back to watering, but her hands were steadier now. For months she had feared that somehow Carver would escape, justice would buy his way out, would return. But 20 years. He would be an old man when he got out, and by then everything he had built would be gone. "There's more in the letter," Cole said. "Stokes wants us to testify, in person. Says our testimony could make the difference." Ayanna stopped again. "Santa Fe. 4 days' ride. We'd be gone almost 2 weeks with the trial and travel. What about the ranch? Red Sky Walker offered to stay here, him and Tom Longfeather. They'd keep things running." Cole hesitated. "But only if you want to go. If you'd rather not face him again, I'll go alone." Ayanna considered this. Part of her never wanted to see Simon Carver again. Never wanted to hear his voice, see those cold eyes, endure his presence. But another part, the part that had stood up in that courtroom 6 months ago, wanted to face him one more time, wanted to look him in the eye and tell the truth of what he had done. "I'll go," she said. "He needs to hear it from me, needs to know he didn't break me." Cole nodded as if he had expected this answer. "Then we leave next Monday. Give us a few days to prepare." That evening, Ayanna walked out to the hill behind the house to the place where 3 wooden crosses marked 3 graves. She had come here often in the past months, especially at sunset. It felt right somehow to share this time with Mary and the boys, even though she had never known them. She sat in the grass, her back against the cottonwood tree, and watched the sky turn gold and crimson. "I hope you don't mind that I'm here," she said quietly to the graves. "Cole says Mary used to sit in this exact spot. I understand why. The view is beautiful." The wind rustled through the cottonwood leaves, a sound like gentle laughter. "Things are good," Ayanna continued. "Better than I ever thought they could be. The garden is growing. The ranch is healing. Cole is healing. I think I might be healing too, though it's hard to tell sometimes." She touched the silver pendant around her neck, the one her father had made. "I wish you could have met him, Papa. I think you would have liked Cole. He's a good man, quiet like you were, strong in the ways that matter." Another gust of wind, stronger this time, warm against her face. "I'm scared of the trial," she admitted. Scared of seeing Carver again. Scared of all those people listening, judging, deciding if my story is true. But I'll do it. Because someone has to stand up and say what happened. Someone has to speak for all of us, he hurt. She heard footsteps behind her. Cole climbed the hill, slowly carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one and sat beside her, not speaking, just sharing the space. They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared and the first stars emerged. Finally, Ayanna said, "Tell me about them, Mary and the boys." Cole was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he began, his voice soft. Mary was small, 5'2", had red hair that caught fire in the sunlight. She laughed at everything, even my terrible jokes, especially my terrible jokes. He smiled at the memory. She was from Ohio originally, came west with her parents when she was 16. Her father had dreams of silver mining, never found much silver, but he found good land. How did you meet? Church social. I was 19, working as a ranch hand for the Miller family. Saved up 6 months to buy a decent suit. Saw her across the room and forgot how to speak English for about 10 minutes. He chuckled. She came over to me, said I looked like a man who needed saving from his own shyness. We were married 4 months later. And the boys, Daniel and Ethan, born in the spring of '84, identical twins. Even I couldn't tell them apart sometimes, especially when they were babies. His voice caught slightly. Daniel was 2 minutes older and never let Ethan forget it. They were 5 when they died, just learning to read. Daniel wanted to be a sheriff. Ethan wanted to raise horses. They sound wonderful. They were. Cole took a sip of his coffee. For a long time after they died, I couldn't come up here, couldn't bear to look at these graves. But then you came and somehow it got easier, not because I forgot them, but because I remembered what it felt like to have purpose, to have someone worth protecting. He looked at her. You gave me that back. Ayanna felt tears sting her eyes. I don't know if I'm ready to replace them. You're not replacing anyone, Cole said firmly. That's not how it works. Love isn't a finite thing that runs out when you use it. It grows. Mary and the boys will always be part of me. But there's room for you too, if you want there to be. I want there to be, Ayanna whispered. I'm just scared. Of what? Of being happy. Every time I've been happy, something terrible happens. My father was taken. My mother died. I'm afraid if I let myself be happy here with you, it will all be taken away. Cole set down his coffee and took her hand. It might be. That's the truth of living. Nothing is promised. Nothing is safe. But we can't stop living because we're afraid of dying. We can't stop loving because we're afraid of loss. He squeezed her hand gently. I'm scared too. Terrified, actually. But I'd rather be scared and alive than safe and empty. Ayanna leaned her head against his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, watching the stars multiply across the endless sky. The next day, Deputy James Redfeather rode up to the ranch. He was not wearing his badge anymore. After helping to expose Sheriff Cowan's corruption, James had resigned his position. He said he was tired of working within a system designed to fail people like him. But he had not left Red Mesa. Instead, he had started something new, a coalition, he called it. Apache, Mexican, Chinese, white settlers who had been cheated or abused. They met twice a month to discuss problems, share resources, help each other. James acted as a kind of mediator, using his knowledge of law and his respect in both communities to bridge divides. Came to talk about the trial, James said, accepting the coffee Ayanna offered. They sat on the porch, the 3 of them watching the garden grow. What about it? Cole asked. Marshal Stokes sent me a copy of the witness list. It's long. 37 people ready to testify against Carver, but the prosecutor wants to start with you, Ayanna, says your testimony sets the stage for everything else. Ayanna felt her stomach clench. First, James confirmed. Day 1, front and center. The whole territory will be watching. Newspapers from as far as Denver are planning to cover it. Why? Ayanna asked. "Why does my story matter so much?" James looked at her steadily. "Because you're the one who said no. You're the one who stood up first when standing up seemed impossible. Everything that happened after all of us finding our courage, it started with you. The prosecutor knows that, wants the jury to know it too." "What do I say?" "The truth," James said simply. "Exactly what happened. How Carver humiliated you at the station, how you came here, how he attacked the ranch. Let them see you, Ayanna. Let them understand what it costs when powerful men think they own other people." Ayanna nodded slowly. "I can do that." "I know you can," James said. "I've seen you face down armed men. A courtroom should be easy after that." But Ayanna knew it would not be easy. Guns she understood. Violence she could prepare for. But standing in front of strangers, exposing her pain, making them believe her. That was a different kind of courage. The week before they left for Santa Fe, something unexpected happened. A wagon rolled up to the ranch driven by a woman Ayanna did not recognize. She was perhaps 60 years old, with silver hair and a back as straight as a lodgepole pine. She wore a simple but well-made dress, and when she climbed down from the wagon, she moved with the precision of someone who had made that motion 1,000 times. "Ayanna Redsky?" the woman asked. "Yes." "My name is Margaret Sullivan. I ran the matrimonial service that arranged your connection with Simon Carver." Ayanna felt her body go rigid. Cole stepped closer, protective. Margaret held up her hands. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to apologize." That stopped Ayanna cold. "Apologize? May I sit?" Margaret gestured to the porch steps. Ayanna nodded, still wary. Margaret sat with a sigh, as if she had been carrying a great weight. "I've been running matrimonial services for 23 years, helped hundreds of women find husbands out west. Good men mostly, hard-working, respectful, but occasionally men would lie in their letters, misrepresent themselves, and I was not always careful enough in vetting them." She looked directly at Ayanna. "Simon Carver wrote beautiful letters, spoke of building a life, creating a family, respecting partnership. I believed him. I should have investigated more carefully, should have spoken to people who knew him, but I was busy and his money was good, and I failed you." "You didn't know," Ayanna said quietly. "I should have," Margaret insisted. "That's my job. To protect women who are vulnerable, who are desperate enough to marry a stranger and travel across the country on nothing but hope. I failed at that, and I'm sorry." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "This is $300. It's what Carver paid me for arranging the match. I want you to have it. It won't undo what happened, but perhaps it can help you build whatever life you're building here." Ayanna stared at the envelope. $300 was more money than she had ever seen in her life. "I can't take that," she said. "Why not?" "Because it's yours. You earned it." Margaret smiled sadly. "I earned it by failing to protect you. Please, take it. Use it for something good. That's the only way I can make this right." Slowly, Ayanna reached out and took the envelope. It felt heavy in her hands, weighted with more than just money. "Thank you," she said. "This is more kindness than I expected." "It's less than you deserve," Margaret replied. She stood smoothing her dress. "I'll be testifying at the trial as well. The prosecutor wants me to explain how Carver misrepresented himself in his application. If there's anything you need, anything I can do, you let me know." After Margaret left, Ayanna sat on the porch steps staring at the envelope. "What will you do with it?" Cole asked. Ayanna thought for a long moment, then she smiled. "I think I'll buy seeds, fruit trees, maybe a milk cow, things that grow, things that last." Cole sat beside her. "That sounds perfect." The night before they left for Santa Fe, the community gathered at the ranch one more time. It had become a tradition of sorts, these gatherings. Every few weeks people would come together to share food, music, news, to remind themselves that they were not alone. Tonight over 50 people crowded into the yard. Red Skywalker and his family brought venison. Maria Gonzalez made tamales. Moses Wright contributed cornbread. Eliza Kern brought 3 apple pies. The Chinese railroad workers, led by Lin Chen, brought rice and vegetables stir-fried in a wok over an open fire. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, someone brought out a fiddle. Music filled the air. Children chased fireflies. Adults talked and laughed, the sound rising like prayers into the darkening sky. Sam Whitehorse arrived late, as he often did, appearing quietly from the darkness. He had been traveling, he said, visiting other Apache communities, sharing the story of what had happened in Red Mesa, spreading the word that resistance was possible, that change could happen. He found Ayanna near the garden, standing alone for a moment, watching the celebration. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "Good," Sam said. "Fear means you understand what's at stake. Only fools are fearless." "What if I fail? What if I get up there and forget what to say, or say the wrong thing, or they don't believe me?" Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Let me tell you a story. 100 years ago, maybe more, there was a great drought. The corn withered, the springs dried up, the people were starving. The elders gathered and argued about what to do. Some said move, some said pray, some said give up and die." He paused, making sure she was listening. But one young woman said, "I will dig." The elders laughed. "Dig where?" they asked. "There is no water." But she went to a place where her grandmother had once found water years before, and she dug. For 3 days she dug alone while everyone else watched and mocked. Her hands bled, her back screamed, but she kept digging. On the 4th day, water seeped into the hole, just a trickle at first, but it grew. Within a week it was a spring. The people survived. Not because the elders were wise, but because one young woman was willing to dig when everyone else had given up. Sam looked at Ayanna. "You are that woman. You dug when everyone else said it was hopeless. You found water in dry ground. Now others will drink because of your courage. So when you stand in that courtroom, remember, you are not speaking just for yourself. You are speaking for everyone who has been told they don't matter, everyone who has been told to be quiet and accept their place." Ayanna felt tears on her cheeks. What if the water dries up again? "Then you dig another well," Sam said simply. "That's what we do. We keep digging." He placed his hand on her shoulder, a gesture of blessing. Then he walked back toward the celebration, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Cole found her a few minutes later. "You okay?" "I think so," Ayanna said. "Sam told me a story. He's good at that." They stood together in the darkness, listening to the music and laughter. Ayanna thought about the past 6 months, about how much had changed, about how she had arrived at this ranch broken and alone, and now stood here surrounded by community, by people who saw her as human, as valuable, as worth defending. "Cole," she said quietly, "whatever happens in Santa Fe, whatever the trial brings, I want you to know something." "What?" "This has been the happiest time of my life. These months here working beside you, building something that matters. I never thought I would have this. Never thought I deserved it." Cole turned to face her. "You deserve everything good this world has to offer." "Do I?" Ayanna asked. "Sometimes I still hear Carver's voice, telling me I'm too much, not enough, wrong somehow." "That's his voice," Cole said, "not yours. And you don't have to listen to it anymore." He took both her hands in his. "Ayanna Redsky, you are the strongest person I have ever met. Not because you don't feel fear, but because you feel it and act anyway. Not because you don't doubt yourself, but because you doubt yourself and still stand up." He pulled her close. For a moment, Ayanna stiffened old instincts, warning her against vulnerability. But then she relaxed into his embrace, letting herself be held. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." "Thank you for letting me," Cole replied. They stood like that for a long time, two broken people who had somehow found a way to heal each other, while around them the celebration continued, a testament to what was possible when people chose courage over fear. The journey to Santa Fe took 4 days, just as Cole had predicted. They rode through high desert country, past red rock formations that looked like frozen flames. At night they camped under stars so thick it seemed you could reach up and gather them by the handful. James Red Feather rode with them, and Red Skywalker too, both planning to testify. They talked little during the day, each lost in their own thoughts. But at night, around the campfire, stories emerged. Red Skywalker told of his grandfather who had fought against the Spanish. James spoke of his mother who had walked the long walk to Bosque Redondo and somehow survived. Cole shared memories of building the ranch with Mary, of dreams they had held and lost. And Ayanna slowly began to tell her own story. Not just the recent parts, but the older wounds, her childhood on the reservation, watching soldiers take her father in chains, her mother's slow death from grief, the years of drifting from place to place, never belonging, always too much or not enough. "I used to pray to disappear," she said one night, staring into the flames, "to become small enough that no one would notice me, quiet enough that I wouldn't cause trouble. I thought if I could just make myself invisible, maybe I could be safe." "And now," James asked, "now I understand that safety and invisibility are not the same thing. Being invisible meant being erased. I'd rather be seen and threatened than unseen and forgotten." Red Skywalker nodded. "That is wisdom." Santa Fe was larger than any town Ayanna had ever seen. Buildings of adobe rose 2 and 3 stories high. The streets bustled with wagons, horses, people of every kind. Spanish, Mexican, Apache, Navajo, white settlers, freed slaves, Chinese merchants. It was overwhelming and thrilling and terrifying all at once. The federal courthouse dominated the plaza, a massive structure of stone and wood. United States flags hung from poles snapping in the wind. Armed deputies stood at the entrance checking credentials. Marshal Stokes met them on the courthouse steps. He looked tired but satisfied. "Good you're here. Trial starts tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock sharp. Judge Patterson is presiding. He's fair, strict about procedure, doesn't tolerate nonsense. The prosecutor is Michael Chen, young but sharp. He'll prepare you tonight for your testimony." "And Carver?" Cole asked. "Locked up tight. Federal holding cell. His lawyers have been fighting every step, filing motions, trying to delay. But Judge Patterson shut them down. This trial is happening." That evening they met with Prosecutor Chen in his office. He was indeed young, perhaps 30, with intelligent eyes and an intensity that reminded Ayanna of Deputy James. "Miss Redsky," he said, shaking her hand, "thank you for coming. I know this will not be easy." "Nothing worth doing is easy," Ayanna replied. Chen smiled. "I like that. Hold on to that attitude tomorrow." He gestured for them to sit. "Let me explain how this will work. You'll be the first witness. I'll ask you questions about what happened. Start from when you arrived at Red Mesa Station. Tell the story in your own words. Be specific, be honest. Don't embellish, but don't minimize either." "What will Carver's lawyers do?" "They'll try to discredit you, make you seem like you're lying or exaggerating. They might suggest you wanted this to happen, that you led Carver on somehow. They'll attack your character, your background, anything they can use." Ayanna felt her stomach clench. "How do I respond?" "With dignity and truth," Chen said. "Don't get angry. Don't argue. Just state the facts calmly. Remember, the jury isn't stupid. They can tell the difference between someone telling the truth and someone lying. Trust them to see you clearly." They spent 2 more hours preparing. Chen asked her every possible question, including the cruel ones Carver's lawyers might use. By the end, Ayanna felt wrung out, exhausted. Back at the boarding house where they were staying, she could not sleep. She lay in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, running through everything Chen had told her. A soft knock came at her door. "It's me," Cole's voice said. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway looking as sleepless as she felt. "Can't stop thinking about it," he said. "Me neither." "Want some company?" "Just sitting, nothing else. Sometimes it helps not to be alone." Ayanna stepped back, letting him in. They sat in the 2 chairs by the window, looking out at the moonlit plaza below. I keep thinking about all the women who came before me, Ayanna said after a while, all the ones who were hurt by men like Carver and had no recourse, no justice, no one who believed them. You're speaking for them too, Cole said. That makes it harder, not easier. What if I fail them? Cole reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. You won't fail. You've already succeeded just by being here, by being willing to speak. That takes more courage than most people have. I'm not brave, Ayanna said. I'm terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. They sat like that until the sky began to lighten, holding hands across the darkness, drawing strength from each other. The courtroom was packed when they arrived the next morning. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls, more crowding the hallway outside. News of the trial had spread. This was more than just one case. It was a symbol of something larger, a reckoning. Ayanna saw familiar faces in the crowd. Maria Gonzalez had made the journey. Moses Wright, Thomas Hayes and his family. Eliza Kern sat in the third row, her face calm but her eyes bright with anticipation. Even old Mrs. Patterson from the boarding house had come. And there, near the back, Margaret Sullivan, the woman who had run the matrimonial service. The jury was already seated, 12 men as the law required. Ayanna studied their faces, trying to read them. Some looked sympathetic, some skeptical, some simply curious. Then the door to the holding area opened, and Simon Carver was led in. He looked diminished somehow. 6 months in a cell had thinned him, grayed him. He wore prison clothes instead of his expensive suits. His hands were shackled, but his eyes, when they found Ayanna, still held that cold hatred. She met his gaze without flinching. You don't own me, she thought. You never did. Judge Patterson entered, a stern-looking man in his 60s with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. Everyone stood. Be seated, the judge said. We will now begin the trial of the United States versus Simon Carver. Mr. Chen, call your first witness. The United States calls Ayanna Redsky to the stand. Ayanna stood on shaking legs and walked to the witness box. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. The bailiff held out a Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do, Ayanna said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Prosecutor Chen approached. Miss Redsky, please tell the court how you came to know the defendant, Simon Carver. Ayanna took a breath. Then she began. I came to Red Mesa Station on September 15, 1889. I had traveled from Gallup on the train. I had answered an advertisement for a matrimonial match. Mr. Carver had written letters saying he wanted a wife, someone to build a life with. I believed him. She continued, her voice growing steadier as she went. She told about stepping off the train, about Carver's reaction, about his public humiliation of her, the crowd's laughter, being abandoned on the platform. Chen guided her through with careful questions. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Every eye was on her. And after Mr. Carver rejected you, what happened? Cole Brennan offered me shelter, took me to his ranch. I worked there, earned my keep. We did nothing wrong, but Mr. Carver could not accept that I had refused him. She told about Bulldog Keller, about the threats, about the night Carver and his men attacked the ranch, trying to burn them out. Why do you think Mr. Carver did this? Chen asked. One of Carver's lawyers shot to his feet. Objection. Calls for speculation. Sustained, Judge Patterson said. Miss Redsky cannot testify to the defendant's state of mind. Chen nodded. Let me rephrase. Did Mr. Carver ever tell you why he was doing this? Yes, during one confrontation, he said I had embarrassed him, made him look like a fool. He said I belonged to him because he had paid for me and he would take what was his. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Patterson banged his gavel. Order. Chen continued questioning for another hour, drawing out every detail. When he finally said, no further questions, Ayanna felt drained. Then Carver's lead attorney stood. His name was Harrison Webb, an expensive lawyer brought in from Denver. He was in his 50s, with a smooth voice and calculating eyes. "Miss Redsky," he began, his tone almost friendly. "You say Mr. Carver humiliated you at the train station. But isn't it true you misrepresented yourself in your application?" "I did not misrepresent anything." "Really, you're nearly 6 feet tall, quite large for a woman. Surely you knew this would be a surprise to any prospective husband." Ayanna felt anger rise but kept her voice level. "I told the truth in my application. If Mr. Carver expected something different, that was his assumption, not my lie." Webb smiled. "I see. And when Mr. Carver expressed disappointment, you immediately went to live with another man, Mr. Brennan. Isn't that rather forward behavior?" "I had nowhere else to go. Mr. Brennan offered shelter. Nothing improper happened." "So you say, but we only have your word for that, don't we?" Chen stood. "Objection! Counsel is badgering the witness and implying facts not in evidence." "Sustained," Judge Patterson said. "Mr. Webb, ask proper questions or sit down." Webb shifted tactics. "Miss Redsky, isn't it true that on Apache reservations, women are often treated as property, bought and sold?" Ayanna's hands clenched. "That is a lie." "Is it? Then explain to the court how Apache marriages work." "Objection," Chen said. "Relevance. I'm establishing cultural context, Your Honor." Judge Patterson frowned. "I'll allow it. But tread carefully, Mr. Webb." Ayanna took a breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "In Apache culture, women are not property. Marriages are partnerships. Both parties must consent. My grandmother was a healer. My mother owned her own horses. We are not savages who buy and sell people. That is what white men do." The courtroom erupted. Some in applause, others in outrage. Judge Patterson banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order, order in this court." When silence returned, Webb tried again. "Miss Redsky, you claim Mr. Carver attacked the ranch. But isn't it true you and Mr. Brennan were harboring stolen property, women who had run away from legal employment? They were not property. They were human beings held against their will, according to you. But their employer said they owed him money. Isn't it possible you interfered in a lawful debt collection?" Ayanna leaned forward. "Mr. Webb, I know what slavery looks like. I know what it means when men treat women as property. Those women were not employees. They were prisoners. We freed them. If that is illegal, then your law is broken." The courtroom erupted again. Judge Patterson looked ready to clear the room, but the applause died down on its own. Webb tried several more times to shake her story, to find contradictions, to make her seem unreliable. But Ayanna held firm. She answered every question with calm dignity. She did not exaggerate. She did not embellish. She simply told the truth. Finally, Webb gave up. "No further questions." "The witness may step down," Judge Patterson said. Ayanna returned to her seat, her legs weak. Cole squeezed her hand. "You did it," he whispered. "You were perfect." The trial continued for 3 more days. Witness after witness testified. James Redfeather presented his ledger documenting years of Carver's crimes. Margaret Sullivan testified about Carver's misrepresentations in his matrimonial application. Maria Gonzalez told her story of abuse. Moses Wright described how Carver had cheated him out of land. Red Skywalker testified about the night of the attack, his account corroborated by Tom Longfeather and Joseph B. Nally. Deputy Gaines, Marshal Stokes's assistant, presented evidence collected from Carver's office, including letters detailing bribery payments to Sheriff Cowan. Carver's lawyers fought hard, but the evidence was overwhelming. And through it all, Carver sat silent, his face a mask. On the 4th day, both sides rested. Judge Patterson instructed the jury. They retired to deliberate. The wait was agonizing. 1 hour passed. Then 2, 3. Some people left the courthouse unable to bear the tension. Others stayed talking in hushed voices. Ayanna sat with Cole holding his hand, trying not to think about what would happen if the jury acquitted. If all of this had been for nothing. After 4 hours, word came. The jury had reached a verdict. Everyone rushed back into the courtroom. The jury filed in, their faces serious. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Patterson asked. The foreman stood. "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of fraud, how do you find guilty?" A cheer started, but Judge Patterson silenced it with a look. "On the charge of bribery of public officials, guilty. On the charge of attempted murder, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, guilty. 4 more charges, guilty on all counts." The courtroom exploded. This time Judge Patterson let it happen. People hugged each other, cried, laughed. Maria Gonzalez was sobbing. Moses Wright stood with his hands raised in praise. Carver sat frozen, his face pale, as if he could not quite believe what had happened. Judge Patterson banged his gavel until order returned. "Simon Carver, you have been found guilty on all charges. Sentencing will occur in 1 week. Until then, you will remain in federal custody. This court is adjourned." As Carver was led away, he looked back one last time at Ayanna, but there was no hatred in his eyes now, just emptiness, defeat. Ayanna felt no triumph, no joy in his suffering, just a quiet sense of completion. It was done. Justice, imperfect and long delayed, had finally come. Outside the courthouse, the celebration continued. Strangers came up to shake Ayanna's hand, to thank her, to tell their own stories of abuse and survival. Margaret Sullivan found her in the crowd, tears streaming down her weathered face. She said nothing at first, just embraced Ayanna tightly. When she finally pulled back, her voice was hoarse. "Thank you for giving me a chance to make this right, for letting me stand with you instead of against you." Ayanna held her hands. "You came back. You testified. That takes more courage than staying silent." Sam Whitehorse appeared from the crowd. "You dug your well," he said, "and we all drank from it." A week later, they returned for sentencing. Judge Patterson was thorough and harsh. "Simon Carver, you have been convicted of multiple serious crimes. You used your wealth and power to hurt those weaker than yourself. You bribed officials, defrauded settlers, and attempted murder when you could not have your way. This court finds you to be a danger to society and utterly lacking in remorse." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I hereby sentence you to 25 years in federal prison to be served in the Territorial Penitentiary. You are ordered to pay restitution to all your victims in amounts to be determined. All your property and assets are to be seized and sold, with proceeds distributed to those you harmed." 25 years. Carver would be nearly 70 when he got out. An old man broken with nothing. It was, Ayanna thought, more mercy than he deserved, but it was justice nonetheless. On the journey back to Red Mesa, the landscape looked different to Ayanna, brighter somehow, more hopeful. They had left in fear and uncertainty. They returned in victory. As they crested the final ridge and Ironwood Ranch came into view, Ayanna felt something shift in her chest. This was home, not just a place she stayed, but a place she belonged. The garden had grown in their absence. Red Skywalker and Tom had tended it well. The corn was knee-high, now the beans flowering. It was beautiful. That evening, as the sun set, Ayanna and Cole sat on the porch. The same place they had sat so many times before. But tonight felt different. "What happens now?" Cole asked. Ayanna smiled. "We live, we grow things, we build, we help others who need it. We keep digging wells in dry ground." "Together," Cole asked. "Together," Ayanna confirmed. He pulled something from his pocket, a ring, simple silver, handmade. "I'm not good with words," he said. "Never have been. But I want you to know that you're not just someone I share space with. You're someone I want to share everything with. My land, my life. Whatever future comes." He held out the ring. "Will you marry me?" Ayanna felt tears stream down her face. Happy tears this time, not born of pain, but of joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will." They sat together as the stars came out, planning a future neither had thought possible 6 months ago. A future of gardens and children and community. A future built not on power or control, but on respect and partnership and love. And far away in a federal prison, Simon Carver sat in a cell and understood finally what he had lost. Not a woman he could control, but a chance at redemption he had thrown away. But Ayanna did not think of him. She thought instead of seeds planted in ashes, of wells dug in dry ground, of people who had stood together when standing seemed impossible. She thought of legacy, not the legacy of wealth or power, but of courage, of refusing to bow, of teaching others that they did not have to bow either. And as the moon rose over the mesa painting, the desert silver, Ayanna Redsky held the hand of the man she loved and knew with absolute certainty that she was finally home, not because she had found a place, but because she had become one, a place where others could come when they had nowhere else to go, a place where being different was not a crime, a place where everyone, no matter who they were or where they came from, could be seen as fully human. That was the legacy she would leave, and it would outlast any courthouse, any verdict, any single life. It would last as long as there were people willing to stand up, to dig wells, to plant seeds in ashes, to refuse, no matter what, to bow. Epilogue, 10 years later, summer 1900. A journalist from the Santa Fe, New Mexican, rode out to what the locals now called Redsky Sanctuary. He had heard stories, a place where outcasts became family, where Apache and white and Mexican and Chinese lived side by side, where a woman who had been thrown away at a train station had built something that endured. He found Ayanna Redsky Brennan in the garden teaching 3 children how to plant corn. Her daughter Kai, 9 years old, now worked alongside 2 younger boys with red hair like their grandmother Mary. "Mrs. Brennan," the journalist said, removing his hat, "they say you changed this territory." Ayanna looked up older now, silver threading through her black hairlines around her eyes from sun and laughter. "I didn't change anything. I just refused to bow. Others did the rest." Behind her, Cole worked the far field with Sam Whitehorse and Red Sky Walker, their voices carrying on the wind. The sanctuary housed 53 people now, a schoolhouse, a clinic, a chapel where 3 faiths shared the same space. "What would you say," the journalist asked, "to others who feel powerless?" Ayanna smiled the same smile that had once been so rare it transformed her whole face. "Dig your well, plant your seeds, stand your ground. The water will come. It always does for those who refuse to stop digging." She turned back to the children, showing them how to press seeds into the earth with care. The journalist watched for a moment longer, then rode away carrying a story that would be retold for generations, not about a woman who was rescued, but about a woman who became a refuge. And that legacy built on courage and refusal and hope would outlast them all.